Today we're going to do the unthinkable. We're going to show you guys how to build a $325 gaming PC step by step, and it's actually good.
For $325, we'll be able to play games at 1080p medium settings at pretty nice frame rates, and it's a custom built computer. We're not upgrading some office PC or workstation PC. We're building something custom. We're going to show you guys step by step how to build it after a word from today's sponsor.
Building a solid gaming PC for $325 is a pretty tough challenge. That's why you need to maximize your savings by buying the best deals possible. And it just so happens that our favorite place to shop and save big is today's video sponsor, Jawa.gg. Jawa is easily the #1 marketplace to buy and sell used hardware and get awesome custom gaming PCs at some pretty amazing prices. Their gaming PC section is constantly full of super solid options, like this Ryzen 5600X and RTX 3070 gaming PC for just $800. And when you hit up the components area of the site, you're able to find deals like this GTX 1660 Ti for just $90. Jawa not only has sellers listing systems and components at extremely affordable prices, but Jawa will also purchase CPUs and GPUs directly from customers to make it the easiest solution for selling components. For more information, be sure to check out Jawa.gg today. And if you end up shopping around, use code TOASTY10 to save 10% off your order up to $10. Big thanks again to Jawa for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's get back to it.
So to start this build off, when you only have $325 to spend, you have to definitely go to some strange places. And we went to AliExpress, which really is not that strange because we bought from them a lot. But we got this motherboard CPU RAM combo here from Machinist, which we've actually used a lot, and we really haven't had any issues with them. But it's it's a nice little small board. It's not gonna be the prettiest color scheme, and you guys are gonna notice with this build, it's not gonna be the prettiest build. It's not gonna be terrible looking. What we have here is an LGA 2011 micro ATX motherboard that you will have to add your battery in because they can't ship those. But we have an Intel Xeon E5 2680 V3, which is a 12-core 24-thread. Which, don't be fooled, you can get one that's less cores and threads. Just really pay attention to that single-core performance and those base and boost frequencies. But you can see here we do have 2 RAM sticks, so it's going to run dual channel. It's 16 gigs total, so 2x8. It's just pretty standard 2133, so it is DDR4 at least. And yeah, I mean, it's going to get the job done, but $70, you can't complain to get all of your basic motherboard essentials. Now, for these LGA 2011, you do have to watch out because a lot of times the standard coolers on Amazon may not work, so just make sure that it's compatible. But we actually got this one from AliExpress. We've had it on our shelf for a while. It's an Iwongou cooler that we paid $10 for. We did swap out the fan to a black fan because the one that was on there was like a really ugly static RGB, and yeah, we just didn't want that because we want the build to look somewhat good. But we're going to leave a link down below to one that comes with a static black fan. Coming in at $27, we have a Silicon Power NVMe SSD. It's just a Gen 3 because I do not think this board is at all capable of Gen 4. We do have one M.2 slot on our board, which we're going to use. And if you want to play it really safe, you can just get a SATA style SSD. But recently, we've had pretty good luck with these NVMe slots.
Now look at this little guy right here. This is a GTX 1660 Super we bought for $100 on eBay, which you can find pretty regularly for $100. I will say, if you want to focus more on the aesthetics department with this build, you can find a 2-fan model on there as well for about $10 more, give or take. And if that's what you want to do for this build, which I would recommend, definitely do that using some deal hunting links in the description down below. But the 1660 Super is our favorite budget GPU in 2024, and now going into 2025, it's still one of the best used market options right now. You can get to entry-level live streaming, play a lot of your favorite esports titles at 1080p high settings, and yeah, have a really good experience. So we highly recommend the 1660 Super, especially with the Xeon combo. And of course, Segotep, GN650, 80 plus gold, 650 watt power supply, plenty of wattage for this build. We could have opted for a much cheaper 500 watt unit if we wanted to, but realistically with this thing coming in at $49, we maybe would have saved $10 here and there going with like a 500 watt unit. So we want to have some upgrade room in the future, and we'll talk more about upgradability throughout this video because that is the one downside with this AliExpress combo. You are limited on what you can actually upgrade, but we're talking such a cheap build, that's really the compromise a lot of you might be willing to make. But again, this power supply, really awesome option. It'll be great for this build. Now to make this thing look a little pretty, we went with a very budget case that also rocks some RGB. This is the DIY PC Q3 that we picked up for $55. It comes with tempered glass, has 3 RGB fans. They are set to all exhaust in its current configuration, and are testing with these budget builds. That is perfectly fine if you want to go for more aesthetic focus because it looks much cleaner this way. If you really want to flip the fans, you can get more airflow as well. But from our testing, runs perfectly fine, especially with this configuration. But at $55, nice case. You can opt for some cheaper ones as well. I know Zalman has a T3, which is a very basic micro ATX case, around $30 to $40, which will be very basic, no RGB, but could save you even more money and maybe work better for your build. But for this build guide, this is gonna be an awesome case, and it's readily available on Newegg. So what we're gonna go ahead and do is show you guys how to set up the motherboard, which really is just Jackson putting the cooler on, because yours will show up like this, the RAM installed and everything ready to go. Put that cooler on, get the case ready with the power supply, put everything together, route those cables, plug it all up, and we'll be ready to game and show you guys what this thing is capable of for $325. Let's get to building.
So what's cool about these AliExpress boards is a lot of times they do come basically ready to go, minus the cooler and the battery. So I'm gonna show you guys how to put this battery in first, just so we don't forget. So this is a CR2025 battery. There's a couple other sizes that'll fit as well. Just to show you guys how a RAM stick goes in. You're basically gonna line up the slot, and on this board, they want you to have both lanes furthest apart, just like that. And then this guy right here is actually for our cooler. So you are gonna need this. A lot of times the coolers will come with one, and if not, your motherboard will also come with one. So a lot of times you'll end up with two, but this is a pretty big CPU. So we're gonna put a really good amount of thermal paste on here. I'm gonna kind of grab the corners here. We're basically making the Toasty Bros logo. We've trademarked that. Joni, you wanna show them that? A little Toasty Bros logo, yeah, pretty cool, huh? All right, so now we're gonna take our cooler, and we should actually be able to leave the fan on, but let's go ahead and get our cable entangled here. We're gonna want the fan facing away from the I/O shield so that it pulls air out the back of the build. And what we're going to do is we're just gonna gently set the CPU, but we're gonna latch the side that doesn't have the little thumb assist. So see here, it's just a tiny little piece of metal because we need a lot of leverage on this side. It's the only downside with these coolers. They're kind of funky, and so using screws, they just use a lot of pressure, just like that. So now, should be able to lift it up by here, and you know, your cooler's not gonna fall off, but we should have plenty of thermal paste on there. We're gonna go ahead and plug in our CPU fan. Looks like a CPU fan 2. CPU fan 1 is all the way over here. That's a strange little spot, but we'll make it work. So we're gonna try to hide some of this excess cable. Make sure you line up the fan with the little notch on there. Oh yeah. That little bogey's in there. And I think the M.2 will kind of hold it down even better. Make sure we get this cable on the other side tucked in. All right, let's go ahead and go on to the M.2 now, since we got our fan installed. We're gonna need a PH1 to roll a little guy. All right, PH1 is installed. So we're gonna go ahead, take this screw out, which actually comes pre-installed, pretty cool. We're going install mode. All right, so now we're gonna take our NVMe, or M.2. We're gonna line up our M.2 with the slot here. The cooler's kind of in the way, but we'll make it work. We're using this to our advantage. That's how we hold the cable down, see? Yeah? Multi-purpose. All right, so now we got our M.2 installed. Make sure that it's nice and in there. Feels pretty firm. And yeah, we got our Iwongou cooler. We got our RAM. We have our CPU underneath it. And now we got a finished motherboard. So now we got to... almost dropped it all. So now we gotta show you guys how to install the I/O shield, the power supply, and then we can put the board inside of the case.
All right, guys, so now it's time to get the case ready for the motherboard install. What we did already is take off the tempered glass side panel and the back panel, put it somewhere safe because you don't want to drop your tempered glass side panel, and we put all these screws back in so you don't lose them. We also took out the screws that were, well, they were right here, right, Jonah? They're just like kind of hanging right here. So these are the screws you will need to install the motherboard and everything else to the case. This is also an extra cover for your PCI slot. When you do need it, you might need it. But what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna install our power supply. First thing you wanna do is untwist all these cables. Wherever the twist tie actually is, they put it in a weird spot this time. And then we're gonna install the power supply in the back of the case, which this case has a pretty decent amount of room in the back for cable management. So if you're a new builder, I think you'll be very happy with it. All right, as you see right here, we also have another twist tie, which is holding all the front panel connectors. Again, don't worry, we just gotta undo this, move it off to the side. We should be good. I'm actually just gonna tuck this up here. There you go, beautiful. So we're gonna take the power supply, and this is a little bit different than a normal case you might be used to. We're gonna take the power supply, we're gonna have the fan side facing out this way because there is a spot on the side panel that brings in air for the power supply. I'm gonna go ahead and line it up with the back spot right here. This is called a dual chamber case, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, there are 4 screw holes that do line up. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what you're gonna go ahead and do is take this bag that came with your power supply, that comes with some zip ties, and you're gonna get out the coarse threaded power supply screws. So if I can do this with one hand. There they are. Now I will compare these screws to another screw here soon, but these are what they look like. Oh, look at them. Jonah's got it. Jonah's got it ready to go. That is a power supply screw, ladies and gentlemen. It has a cap on the top. It is coarse threaded and is designed to screw in power supplies. So I'm gonna go ahead and take that from Jonah. And we are using a smaller bit right here, but I think I can make that work. I would recommend putting on a PH2. Don't do what I do. So we're gonna go ahead and go to the top left first. And then we're going to make our way around town, partner. Just like that, your power supply is now installed. Next thing we gotta do is take our I/O shield and install it into the case. One thing I like to do, I don't know why they include this. This is like a cover for Ethernet on this I/O shield. We're just gonna go ahead and break that off because use Ethernet, and also this does not come with Wi-Fi out of the gate. If you want to use Wi-Fi, you're gonna need to buy like a Wi-Fi adapter, which we'll probably start including links down below for that if you guys want Wi-Fi in our builds. I just randomly thought about that. All right, so we're just gonna wiggle this back and forth, and then it'll break off. Be very careful, that's gonna be a little sharp, but it should be fine. Should be fine. Hopefully you guys don't cut yourself and send me pictures of it. As you see right here, this is where the I/O shield is going to line up. A good rule of thumb for all motherboards, even these motherboards, is these little circular ports or cutouts right here, or for the audio jacks, that is 99% of the time on the bottom. So we're going to go ahead, line up our I/O shield like so, with those audio ports on the bottom, push in each corner, and boom, just like that, our I/O shield is installed. It is a little bit difficult sometimes for your first time build, so don't freak out if it's more difficult than you might think. Just push each corner very carefully and you should get them to click into place. Now what we're gonna go ahead and do is lay down our case, lower the table for cameraman, AKA Snow Bunny. Yeah, don't you love that?
There we go. We're gonna probably...
On this too, I'll show them this. There's also this random, why is this one not plugged up? Isn't it normally all plugged up? Might need a hub, we'll figure that out. No, I thought these were like daisy chain proprietary. Why is there ARGB on this one? I'm so confused. We'll check with the ARGB in a minute. It might be a little bit different than what I'm used to because I remember this being proprietary, maybe with an ARGB header so you can plug up to the board. We won't be using ARGB with this one, so we'll figure that out when we get there. But let's go ahead and get the motherboard installed. We're gonna check and see if there's any extra standoffs we need. These are the standoffs, by the way, these little metal pieces in the case. By the looks of it, I think we're gonna be good. I think that's actually gonna be all of them. But we'll go ahead and lay this little tiny board in here. As I mentioned, this board is really tiny. So this aesthetic is not aesthetic enough for you. And you really just rather put this thing inside like a very basic case. Zalman T3 is one that has like a tempered glass side panel and it's much smaller, would fit very nicely. There's a lot of them on the market you can get. DIY PC has another one that's smaller. So there are options that you can go with, but for this build, I think it does the job and it actually has all the standoffs we need ready to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and do myself a favor and switch to a PH2. And then we're gonna go ahead and screw in this motherboard using fine threaded screws in the bag that you got with the case. And I'll show you guys the difference. Okay, remember this guy? That is a power supply screw. This guy right here is a fine threaded screw. We're gonna run with those and screw in the motherboard in all the spots where the standoffs line up with the holes on the motherboard. Now we're gonna screw in right here. For demonstration purposes, you would screw in here, 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 and here. But what we're gonna do is I'm gonna leave the bottom screws out for now because as you see, there's a massive gap between this cutout here and this cutout here to plug stuff in. For the basic connectors like front panel and also HD audio and even USB, it's safe to run them behind the board as long as you'll get them pinched on the back connectors of the motherboard. So we like to do that to make these builds where the motherboard is kind of small look a lot cleaner. So we're gonna leave those unscrewed for now. But hey, the motherboard is in the case for now. It is held in nice with the two screws up top. Now we're gonna run some cables and then we will screw that motherboard back in. We'll go ahead and set this up like so, and then we'll run some cables, show you guys how to plug everything up, and then screw in that motherboard before installing the GPU, and then we're ready to go.
All right guys, it's that time of the day. Time to plug in some cables, starting off with the 24 pin. This is the main power coming off of the power supply, and we're gonna run that through a little cheeky spot behind the board.
And with those screws gone, we can, well, easily do that. As you see, here comes the 24 pin. We're going to plug it up right here, flap the clip, and go blop, blop. Just kidding. Blop. Just plug it in, and there you go, your 24 pin is good to go.
Next up, we're going to be installing the CPU 8 pin or 4+4 pin. And now this one normally would go up top, like the back here, but this being an AliExpress board, it's actually going to be near the 24 pin.
Just start down and work your way up. There it comes, yeah. So here you go, CPU. It's going to plug up right here. It's actually a pretty convenient spot for this build. Plug it in, good to go. You guys at home will easily be able to see that.
Now this next cable you're not going to plug in just yet, but just preemptively, the PCIe 8 pin or 6+2 pin, you're only going to need one, and keep in mind we got a pretty small card, so we're just going to run ours through this bottom slot, but that'll probably apply to a 2 or 3 fan as well.
Yeah, if you have a 2-fan card, it'll probably fill up, let me give you a little demo right here. It'll probably go to like right here, but we're more like right here.
So we're actually almost done with the power supply. We just have one more thing to connect from it, and that's a SATA for the fans. So the fans actually run off all of this single SATA right here. So that can only plug in one way. It has a little notch. I'm going to plug that in. And now the fans are actually going to be controlled by the reset switch, which I've plugged in right here. That comes off the back fan. So Now we can kind of just, you know, keep our power supply cables off to their side, and we can go ahead and start with all of our front header stuff. So now we're gonna go ahead and plug in our front panel. This part's actually pretty easy if you just follow along, but you get a few different connectors here. It'll be different case by case, but we're gonna run that just right through here, question?
Behind the board, sir.
Behind the board, okay, we're getting real fancy.
So as you guys can see, well, it's coming behind the board. Again, you don't have to do this if you don't really care about how this PC looks, but if you want to make it look nice and clean, run them behind the board. They'll come out right here. That colorful header right over there, that is where the front panel is going to plug in. Mikhail's put a diagram on screen here. So top right should be power LED, but below that we're going to do hard drive LED. That's green. Hard drive LED is green. Red is power LED, positive and negative. And black is power switch, but we're going to leave blue, which in theory should be reset switch, alone.
The next connector we're going to be plugging in is our USB 2.0, which is going to look like this guy here. It'll typically say USB, and it'll also be missing a pin on the very end. We're going to run that as well behind the board. So be prepared to have a bulge.
Be prepared for a little bulge action.
Nothing wrong with that.
All right, so USB 2 is right next to this USB 3 header. Line up the missing pin. Plug her in. And just like that, USB 2 is ready to go.
And now we have the HD audio, which it looks just like USB 2, but you'll notice it'll say HD audio and it's missing a pin closer to the middle of the pinout rather than the edge. And is that in a weird spot?
Nope, normal spot.
Normal, what the heck? AliExpress, you shouldn't have. All right, we're behind the board.
An HD audio on the far left over there. Make sure you line up the missing pin. Push it in like so, and boom, you're good to go there.
We have one more connector, the sacred USB 3. It's a giant connector. Is that gonna have to go behind the board?
In theory, it could. What do you think? How thick is it?
Try it.
Yeah, let's try it. We're gonna try behind the board for the USB 3.
Can I do this and then have you like...
Yes, I can do that.
That might actually make it work a little better.
Oh yeah, so here we go. There's the USB 3 header right there. Got this thing running behind the xeon. Line it up, push it in, and just like that, looks a little bit cleaner. Instead of all the cables coming from right here and way long up there, it looks a little nicer. So what I will do before I proceed is screw in the rest of the motherboard. All right guys, the motherboard is now screwed in and ready to go. All right guys, it's now time to install the graphics card. Look at our little guy right here. Once again guys, do some deal hunting. You could find some 2-fan models that'll look nicer in this build on eBay for maybe 10 to 20 bucks more. And sometimes you might be able to find one for the same price. So deal hunt guys, it is your friend. So we're gonna go ahead and remove this cover right here, which allows us to access the PCI slots for us to install our graphics card. We're gonna go ahead and line it up and see where we're at in the case. And luckily for us, we don't have to actually add anything back to cover this top one because we're gonna use it. So we got the top one open here, but we will have to break this one off right here. Bend in, wiggle back and forth. And just like that, you now have 2 open covers. So you can take your graphics card, make sure the lock on this PCI slot is pushed back so you can slide in your graphics card. Line it up like so. And push until you hear a click. Then we're gonna take our power supply screws, the screws we used to screw in the power supply at the beginning, line it up with the 2 screw holes, and start screwing it in. Then we're gonna take one more screw up top and do the same thing. And we're gonna go ahead and take this cover, put it back on, take this little short power supply screw that they made just for this, and tighten that down. And boom, there you go. The cover's back on, the graphics card's installed. Last thing we gotta do is plug in the power, which this only requires a 6-pin for power. So we're gonna take this 8-pin, remove this +2. So this piece right here, sometimes it can be a little difficult. You gotta slide it up and away. So now we only have 6. You can peel this off so it looks a little nicer. Go ahead and do this so you don't have to worry about that. Wow, I just made a 6-pin. It's beautiful. Go ahead and shove that back in there for Jackson for cable management. And then we're gonna take our 6-pin and plug it up right here. Line it up, push it in, and boom, we're good to go. Now to clean this up a little bit more, we're gonna take a couple zip ties that came with our power supply, or you can use whatever ones you want, and zip tie this to make it look a little cleaner. All right, that looks good there, that looks good there. And I'm gonna take some cutters, cut that. And just like that, we are ready to cable manage. Your PC should be in fully functioning state right now, but we're gonna clean it up a little bit with some cable management in the back, and then from there, we'll be ready to turn it on and play some games on it.
All right, it's time for everyone's favorite time of cable management. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna take our extra cables from the power supply first, and we're gonna shove all of those into the hard drive cage, which this is something I'll do in pretty much any type of case I get, especially in the computer case as like a power supply basement. And you can see that already makes this job look a lot easier, especially when you don't have a modular power supply. You just wanna get as much as you can out of the way. So now we're just kind of left with this. So once again, don't be scared to use plenty of zip ties. We're gonna go ahead, come over here. We wanna make sure that we don't run any of the cables through like the back of the PC where you'll be able to see it. So we're gonna keep them out of the way of the fans and the cutouts. And yeah, I like to work my way from the top, kind of work down from there. Just make sure we're kind of clean up top. So this is one where it's actually a lot easier than normal. Sometimes you only need a few zip ties, and that was definitely one of those times where we only had to use a couple. We're gonna go ahead and just run those, and then boom, we got a pretty good looking build here at this point. So now we're gonna go ahead and turn it on and make sure it works one more time, and then we can benchmark it.
All right, guys, it is time to turn on this build and make sure it works.
Don't forget that power switch in the back of the power supply too.
Yes, flip that to the on position, and also, ooh, green. Green. There you go, it's not bad. Single slot card, not amazing, but it's green now. It looks pretty good for the price, 325 buckaroos. Let's go and get to some gaming, show you guys what it can do.
All right, guys, we are playing Black Ops 6 Warzone, and we are currently running some fairly low settings. We're doing basic, which is 1 up from the minimum, and we are running 1080p. We're not using any upscaling at the moment, which might buy you a little more FPS, but probably not like tons. But we'll give it a go as long as we don't, die off the rip.
And yeah, this is definitely, again, a worst case scenario kind of game. I wouldn't really recommend somebody build a PC just for Call of Duty Warzone at this price point. You're better off doing one of our workstation upgrades to get the best bang for buck, but we will give it a shot here.
My team pinged the boat and nobody landed here with me.
So the boat had some pretty decent loot. Oh, well.
Who is this
guy?
Oh, he was AFK, I'll take it.
Stay alive that long. I don't know where that came from.
Oh. This thing has a silencer on it, so they don't even know.
I love Omni movement jumps.
Bro,
the movement. The movement is insane.
Which one's real? All right, so we're trying out FSR 3.0. We're using the performance. We're using the performance setting. I forgot what it was. But I'm just gonna try to hopefully like one kill with this real quick. The game definitely looks a little worse, but it's definitely running a lot better.
It'd be funny.
Don't even try to hit the sniper me player.
Don't even try. That's crazy. This is crazy.
Oh, that was actually an enemy.
I didn't know that was an enemy.
Little quick scope. Oh my god, it's not reloaded.
Oh,
that's it. That's the only run you get. But we got like 100 FPS, pretty close, give or take. And the game only looked a little bit worse. So actually, FSR worked pretty decent with this NVIDIA card.
Next game. All right, guys, we are now testing Fortnite, which will be an interesting test for that E5 2680 V3, and it's pretty low clock speed, being a 12-core 24-thread, far view distance, low textures. We've had pretty decent luck with these Xeons, but for the most part, it all has the same issue, which is stuttering on launch. After a couple launches, it might get a little bit better, but for the most part, you're just kind of lacking the single-core performance. There are some other Xeons you can get on AliExpress that are more like 6-core 12-thread or 8-core 16-thread that have higher clock speeds, and those might be a better option, but this being the cheapest combo to get to the $300 price point, that's why we decided to go with it. But we'll see how everything holds up once we land. Kind of just hoping for around like a 90 to 100 FPS experience, because I think that'd be acceptable. And there is performance mode, by the way, which I have seen in the other PCs we've tested. It does a pretty good job taking older hardware and running a lot smoother, especially on OG Fortnite. Oh, where'd you go? Oh God, where are you going here? What's happening? Run away! Please don't have us. Oh! Okay. Yeah, what I probably would do is cap the frame rate to like something like 120, give or take. Because these 200 FPS, I mean, it's nice, but it's very annoying when you have a little hitch in your step every single time. Imagine. Imagine. Oh, I got multiple people shooting at me now. What have I done? Oh, wait a minute. I underestimated you.
Ooh, I don't know if him pushing you was a good decision.
Yeah,
there.
you kind of messed that up. Oh, there's somebody else coming.
Oh.
And to clean it up, it was fine. Again, I would probably lock the FPS to really limit the stutters here, but all in all, with this setup, are you getting an upgrade path? No. Are you getting a custom-built computer versus an office PC? If you want the experience of building a computer on the cheap, yeah, you're getting that with these AliExpress combos. But let's run some other benchmarks, show you guys the limitations of this PC, and then talk about the entire value proposition, because while the Semper point average is probably gonna look really good, there is a bit of a caveat when it comes to this platform and what you have to deal with.
All right, guys, let's talk about some extra benchmarks on this $325 gaming PC. First up, we ran Rainbow Six Siege 1080p low settings. We're targeting performance settings here. Got an average of 248 FPS, a minimum of 173, and a max of 310. Very playable even on this older Xeon. We then switched up to Cyberpunk at 1080p medium settings with no upscaling. Got an average of 60 FPS, a minimum of 50, and a max of 70. Still a very demanding game that the 1660 Super can play at 1080p 60 FPS. We also ran CS2 with their benchmark tool on low settings 1080p and got an average of 188 FPS, with 81 FPS being the low. Just goes to show the Xeon, even though it has a lower clock speed, can still get higher FPS numbers in esports titles, while be it not super smooth, it's still really good. We then ran Black Myth Wukong 1080p low settings at 66% render scale, the most demanding game we're going to be testing today. It got an average of 77 FPS, a max of 93, a minimum of 43. This is probably a game I wouldn't focus on playing on with this PC, but you can play it if you are desperate enough. And lastly, Spider-Man Miles Morales at 1080p medium settings with FSR got an average of 60 plus FPS. All in all, in terms of the extended benchmarks, this PC can play much more than you might think, but we gotta talk about that 3D Mark score at the end of the video and why, yes, it is a really solid price performance PC. There are some considerations you need to make as a consumer when buying this because of the limited upgrade path. So let's go to that outro and talk about that 3D Mark score.
Alright, we just got done benchmarking our very cheap gaming PC, and I gotta say, it did pretty good overall. I think people really sleep on these older Xeon processors, and if you use them with the right graphics card, you can have a pretty good cheap budget build.
And it's all about expectations when it comes to longevity for these systems. I'll talk more about that after I tell you all the 3D Mark score, which was 6,061, which is a 5 Semper point score, which sounds amazing, but one thing our viewers have pointed out, and it's something to mention, with these Semper point scores, you do have to factor in the hardware that's going along with it. The Semper point is a good way for us to get a interest check on the actual price performance before we factor in other factors. And one factor is this motherboard is not very upgradable. It's kind of a disposable system if you think of it. You use it for as long as you can, then you build something new later. So that might be a reason for you maybe to avoid this configuration to go with something a little bit different. But I really like these things for price performance out of the box. And if you're wanting to build something, you don't want to upgrade an office computer, you want that experience of building a cheap PC for $325, this is quite fun using this AliExpress combo. So if you want to build it yourself, links in the description down below will be affiliate links. They will help us out. Let us know what you think of this PC down below, and will you be building it going into 2025?
And as always, we hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, check out our other two YouTube channels and also our twitch.tv/toastybros, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
And we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.
So this PC will come with a small warranty as well as a really good price.
Buy this PC at PC Bros, or you can buy other PCs. Whether you're looking to spend $300 or $2,000, we can have you covered. I was gonna say we can do a lot of things for you guys at PC Bros. Just ask. Toasty Bros on checkout. See you guys later. Goodbye.